There are a couple ways you can print off a range of cells. Like if you don't want to print off the entire worksheet, just go ahead and select that range and then go backstage File down to Print. And right now it wants to print the active sheet, so you see a sheet that we have active. I mean, if we had more than one worksheet within the workbook, select the one that you want to print, and with it being active, it'll print that one, because what you see over here is what's going to come out of your printer, so make sure you got the right worksheet selected. But we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to click on the drop-down arrow. We don't want to print the entire workbook. We want to print what we have selected. Selected, it updates it, and that's what we have selected, so we're good to go. Go ahead and click Print. Let's go ahead and hit the back arrow. What about multiple selections? How does it handle that? Let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's click and drag to select that. Hold down the Control key and click and drag, and click here and drag there. So I have a total of 4 different selections. Let's go backstage, click on File, down to Print. And, well, there's the first selection. Let's scroll down to the bottom. Remember, we had a total of 4, so each selection gets its own separate page. Let's go ahead and go back. Now, when I click off of this, it deselects everything, but if I want to keep that so I don't have to remember how to reselect it, in other words, I want to use the Set Print Area feature, leave it selected, come up here, click on the Page Layout tab, go to the Page Setup group, click on the Print Area drop-down arrow, and there you go. Set the print area. When you click on it, it borders those selections. So when I click off, you can, well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a border that goes around that selection, this one, and, well, that cell in this area here. So when I'm ready to print, let's go ahead and click on File, go down to Print. Okay, that's not one of my selections, or the ones that I set as a print area. So just what I said, it wants to print a selection. We don't want to print a selection. We want to click on the drop-down arrow, go to the active sheet, and go off the Set Print Area. It doesn't print the entire sheet, just those areas that we set to print on that active sheet. So let's go ahead and scroll down. How many do we have? 4. 1 for each Set Print Area. It gets its own separate page. Cool. Let's go ahead and go back. And then to clear that, just come up here, click on Print Area, and say you want to clear it. Or if you have additional areas that you want to add to the areas that you already set to print, in other words, it's nice to be able to select those areas within the viewable screen, but if I have to scroll down and select another area, well, then that makes it nice because then I can come up here and say, okay, I want to add that. So instead of 4 print areas, when I click Add To, click off, there's that one, and there's the other 4, I get 5. So File, to Print, and I should have 5 pages when I scroll down to the bottom, and I do. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit back. And then to clear it all off, go ahead and just click on Print Area and go down to Clear Print Area, and they all disappear. Now next I want to go over what I covered in an earlier training video about print scaling. In other words, when I want to be able to take my worksheet and fit it all, like let's say into one page, I can scale it down so the size of the font will be smaller, but hopefully not too small that I can't see it on the page, because then that defeats the purpose of the scaling feature, but small enough that I can still see it when I print it off. And the nice thing about the Scale to Fit feature is that when it comes to me working in the design view on my worksheet, it doesn't shrink it here, because the alternative, if I didn't have that feature, would be to come up here on the Home tab and select the entire worksheet and then set the font size a lot smaller. And that can be annoying if I want to be able to see it while I'm working on it in a larger size of font and not have to switch back and forth saying, okay, I'm working on it, here's a large size, now let me change it down to a smaller size so I can print it off so it can all fit onto one worksheet, and then come back here, select it again, and change the size. No. What you can do instead is come up here and click on the Page Layout tab, go to the Scale to Fit group, and that will scale it down, but only when it comes to printing. It won't scale it down here when you're working within the worksheet here. So for example, you can see when I went to the print preview, as we discussed in an earlier training video, that after you come back out of print preview, it'll show you the dashed line, the page breaks. So right now we got a vertical page break. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there to the left-hand side of my white cross, and it's splitting or breaking between columns G and H. So if I'm like, oh, I really got to have column H and I, scale it down so when we print it off, the size of the font will be smaller, but only when it comes to printing, not here. So watch what happens, that page break, when I come up here and I go from 100% of normal size, of the font size, down to, let me click down once, and did you see that? It went from going between column G and H to H and I. So at 95%, it says that it could fit column H in there. All right, I want column I. So let's go ahead and down again. 90% is not doing it. So it's 90% of its full size. So when I click down again, okay, 85%, it says, well, the page break shows to the right of I that it will be able to fit columns A through I. Well, let's take it for a test drive just to be sure that it all fits onto one page. So File, down to Print, because what you see over here is what's going to come out of your printer. Yeah, it looks like it, but you want to scroll down to the bottom and check this out. There's page 1, page 2. Page 2, it doesn't fill up the entire page. Let me scroll down to page 3, and page 3 is blank. Well, we talked about that in an earlier training video. Let me go ahead and hit the back arrow. That when it's so close that it's cutting off a little bit part of the white spot there, you won't see the white spot. That's why it looks like as a blank page, because you don't see white on white, right? So what we want to do is probably scale it down just a teeny bit more. And you don't have to go down every 5% here. You can come in here and let's do 81, hit enter, because we want to make the size of the font when we print it off as large as we can, as legible as we can, because if it's too small, then people won't be able to read it. So let's go ahead and take a look at it now at 81%, and you can see the page break is now over to column J, so it's not going to cut off anything close to it. We have extra gappage here. Let's go ahead and click on File, go down to Print, so we shouldn't have an extra page. We just should have 2. Fabulous. Oh, that's great. Now you can make adjustments here as we went over in an earlier training video without going back. Onto the Page Layout tab to the Scaling group, we can go ahead and click and drag the scroll bar down, and then drag that down. And well, there's custom scaling that we talked about. You can click on it, and you can say that you want to fit everything onto one page if that's your goal, or fit all columns onto one page and fit all rows, and then you'll have to see, because there's a give and take, and again it comes all to scaling, about how it's going to shrink everything to fit onto one page, or to bring the columns onto one page, or all the rows onto one page. You got your custom scaling options, which brings up the page setup window, which you can also come down and click on the link, page setup. And there you can adjust to, well, 81%. You may want to go up to 82 because, in my opinion, I like to make the font, when it comes to printing it off, as large as I can, but yet have everything fit, or at least those columns, so they're not breaking onto page 3 and 4. So I got the columns all onto one page, and it's just the rows, the records, that are breaking across other pages because it can't fit all into one page. So you can do that, and in fact, if you want to fit everything onto one page, instead of second guessing here, like should it be at 50%, 60%, and keep doing that and looking over here to see if it's on one page, you can go ahead and select the option just below it, fit one page by one page tall. Okay, let's go ahead and click Okie dokie, and did it fit? And there we go, one page, fit everything, but at what cost? Let's go ahead and, is it zoomed in? Okay, click to zoom in. That's not too bad. That's what it's going to look like when I print this out. So it's still legible. In any case, let's go ahead and hit the back arrow to see what percentage of scaling it went to. And there it is. On the Page Layout tab, Scale to Fit is at 70%. So you see what I'm saying? You can come in here and do the scaling, and when you scale down, you'll see that if the page break is in between G and H, it'll start going out to fit in all the columns in there, but you won't be able to see the horizontal unless you scroll down, the horizontal page break, to be able to shrink that to see it start to disappear. So for me, it's a lot easier if I just go ahead and make that option in the page setup, which is right here. You can access it on the Page Layout tab in the Page Setup group. Click on the Expandable Dialog Box button, and it's right there. Now you can do it here, or let me close out. It's right here in the Scale to Fit group. You can have the width as one page and the height as one page, or maybe you're okay with 2 pages because you want to make the font larger. You don't want to scale it down to 70%. So let's go ahead, and it's like unloosing your belt, trying to expand here. It'll also expand the size of the font when it has more room, so click 2 pages and it goes from 70 to 81%. So the font has now increased. Now again, you're not going to see it here. That's what makes it nice about the scaling feature. is because I get the font size the way I'd like to see it when I'm working on my worksheet, but when it comes out of the printer, it'll be different. It'll be 81% of its normal size. Now, if you're like, I want to be able to do the scaling feature, you won't have access to it. It's faded out unless you change it to go to automatic for the width and automatic for the height, and then it's available because it wants to keep it in proportion when you use this feature right here to scale it down. Or you can actually scale it up. You want larger size font, but not so large when it comes to you in the working view that it's annoying, just when you print it off. And notice when I increase it, okay, there's the horizontal page break, that gray dash line. So when I increase it, is it going to go up and put less on page 1 or let more come onto page 1? Well, when it increases the font size, it's taking up more space, so it's going to go up. So if I go from 110 to 115, you can see that's moving up, and also the vertical page break is coming in. So horizontal up and vertical left. So we're getting less and less information on the first printed page, and there's your quadrants. There's the first page, the second, well, there's the second page. I have to scroll down. Okay, there's page 2, and then over here is page 3, and then page 4. So to exaggerate to make a point, let's go ahead and you can see the size is still the same here, but when I go back to print it, okay, let's go up a bit more. Let's make this huge, 140%. Okay, click on File, go down to Print. Okay, that's a lot bigger. That's not normal. That's scaled up quite a bit. And if you want to be able to see it, you can scroll down here, click on Custom Scaling, and click on Page Setup. That way you don't have to leave the backstage here. You can see it's adjusted to 140% of normal size. Now if you have a workbook that has a bunch of worksheets, as I have here, a total of 5, a sheet for each state that we made sales in. So sheet 1 is California, sheet 2 is Utah, sheet 3 is New York, and so on. Unless I've got these sheets memorized, like sheet 2 is California, oh, it's Utah. You can go ahead and rename the worksheets instead of the generic names like sheet 1, sheet 2 by right-clicking on the sheet tab, and in the shortcut menu, go up and click on Rename. When you click on it, it puts the sheet name into edit mode, and you can see the cursor's flashing there and it's highlighted. So all you have to do is just go ahead and start typing to overwrite it, and to accept the change, hit the Enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. Another way to do it is just to simply double-click on the Sheet tab, and you can see it automatically puts it in edit mode. Then you can just go ahead and start typing. And you don't even have to hit Enter on the keyboard. You can just go ahead and click off of it, and it accepts the changes. Let me go ahead and do the rest. Now, in addition to renaming the worksheets, you can give it some couleur, color, that is. So if we have certain states that are doing great in sales, let's give them the color green, and those that aren't doing so well, maybe yellow or even the dreadful red. So let's go ahead and right-click on one of the worksheet tabs and go to Tab Color. You got your theme colors, and you got a variation of green here, olive green, accent 3, lighter, 40%. I'm going to stick with the standard colors of green here, just a simple green. Click on it, and it highlights it in green. You don't see it completely until you click off of it, then it's totally green. And when you click on it, that means the worksheet's active, so it doesn't have it in full green mode. It puts the name in bold, and it gives you a green underline, again, to let you know that that's the worksheet you're looking at, the active worksheet. Let's go ahead and do some more. Like, how about California and New York? And if I want to do them both at the same time, you can select one, California, hold down the Control key and click on New York to do a non-linear selection. And then right-click on either one of those highlighted worksheet tabs. I can do New York, right-click on it, go to the tab color, and let's say those are red. Click off, and there you go. Now for block selections, like if I want to go ahead and select everything from California to Arizona, go ahead and select California, hold down the Shift key and click on Arizona, and then right-click anywhere on that selection, and go up to tab color, and go to everybody's favorite color, that's right, purple. And then click off. Cool. Now if you need additional worksheets, you can come over here and click on the plus sign, and whatever worksheet that you have that's active, it'll add the worksheet to the right of it. So if you want to add a worksheet to the right of New York, select New York and then go ahead and click on the plus sign, and it adds it with the generic name of sheet 1. And it also gives it the same color because it was inserted in between that range of tabs that already had the color purple. So when I click off, there's sheet 1. You can do it that way to add additional worksheets, or you can go ahead and right-click like on Utah and come up here and click on Insert. Opens up the Insert window, and Worksheet is selected by default, so you can just go ahead and click OK. And in this case, whatever tab I right-clicked on to insert it, it inserts it in front of that. So the plus sign to the right-click to the insert in front of the tab that we had selected. And then if you made a mistake, you're like, oh, I don't need those. You can go ahead and right-click on Sheet 2 and delete it, and then right-click on Sheet 1 to delete that one as well. Now, if you're like me and you're like, something's not right, it's because I'm anal, and A has to come before C for California to do it sorted alphabetically, A through Z. Well, through U, that would be at the end, not Z. So to go ahead and reorder your worksheets, you can go ahead and just click on the Worksheet tab, and then you can see my pointer's got the document behind it, the sheet, and then you get this little black triangle pointing down. When you move it over to the left-hand side, wherever that black triangle is, that's where it's going to dump and unload the Arizona worksheet into. So I got to make sure it's before California, let go, and there you go. And okay, it's still not right. Utah has to come after the N for New York, if I remember my alphabet. Let's go ahead, and the other way, instead of clicking and dragging, is you can right-click. And the reason why you may want to do this is because if you have 50 worksheets, do you really want to click and drag forever? Instead, you can right-click on it and go up to Move or Copy. We're just going to move, so let's go ahead and click on Move or Copy. And it says, where do you want to move it? Before what sheet? Well, I want to move it before the summary sheet, so let's go ahead and select Summary, and then click Okie dokie. I feel better. You can also make copies of your worksheet, like for example, if I'm bringing on a new state, Vermont, that we've got sales in. Instead of creating a new worksheet and retyping in the labels here, lemon, lavender, peppermint, and then the Q1 labels and the totals, how about if I could just go ahead and make a copy of one of these, and then of course after I make a copy of it, update it from Utah to Vermont and update the numbers respectively, I mean for the sales that were made in Vermont. So to go ahead and make a copy of a worksheet, just go ahead and you can right click on it and go up to Move or Copy. See, I'd bring you back to copy. You thought I wouldn't. Go ahead and click on it. And you want to go ahead and click on Create a Copy of what we right-clicked on, which is Utah, and where do we want to put it? If it's Vermont, it better be before Summary and after Utah, because I got to keep my worksheet sorted alphabetically. Let's go ahead and click OK, and there we go. So it gives me Utah 2, which I can go ahead and double-click and type in Vermont, hit Enter, and then I can come up here and update the cell here, the title for the worksheet, and then of course update the numbers respectively for the sales that we made in Vermont. You can do it that way, or to make a copy of a worksheet, just go ahead and click on it to select it, and then hold down the Control key and then click and drag it. Remember our little triangle pointing downwards and the worksheet that's just below the pointer? Well, that worksheet, I don't know if you can see it, it's got a little plus sign on it now. That means it's in copy mode. That is, as long as I have the Control key held down. So if I go ahead and drag it and say, okay, it's going to be between California and New York, let go of the mouse first, let go of the Control key, and there you go. Copy of Utah. Cool. Let's go ahead and right click on it because I don't want to keep it and delete it. And yes, it will be permanently deleted. Okie dokie. Next, I want to show you how you can copy and or move your worksheets to another workbook. And that other workbook, let me go ahead and create it. Let me right click down below on the taskbar, the workbook that I currently have open to get the jump list, and then go up to Excel to open up a new Excel workbook. There we go. Generic name, Book 1. So let me go ahead and click Save, and we're going to do it to the desktop here, and let's update it and call it our European Sales. And there's the original workbook that we still have open, Managing Worksheets. So now we have two on the desktop, the one that we were working on and the new one, European Sales. Go ahead and click Save. Updates the title. Cool. Then I can go back down to the taskbar and click on Managing Worksheet, because in order for me to go ahead and move and or copy worksheets from this workbook to another, that other workbook has to be open. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So if I want to go ahead and let's say we want to be able to move Arizona through Utah, click on Arizona, hold down the Shift key, select Utah, so it can select Arizona to Utah and everything in between. And then go ahead and right click on the selection, go up to Move or Copy. And right now, we're going to be moving it within the worksheet, this Managing Worksheet, unless we click on the drop-down arrow and say, is there another workbook out there? Yes, European Sales. That's why you have to have it open. Go ahead and select European Sales, and then, well, where do you want to move it? we don't get a choice. We can go ahead and move it to the end behind sheet 1 or move it in front of sheet 1. Let's move it to the end and click okie dokie. And then now it puts me over in the European Sales Workbook, and it's at the end after the first worksheet. And there they are. And when I go back to Managing Worksheet, you can see, oh, they're all gone. Well, let me go ahead and go back to European Sales. And then, of course, here I can go ahead and double-click and update these to, France, and then type in and update the numbers here so I don't have to recreate the worksheet for the European sales. And then if I made a mistake, I'm like, okay, I meant to copy it because I still want these states back into the original workbook. These were just brought over so I could go ahead and not have to retype in everything here as far as the items go. So let's go ahead and with Arizona selected, hold down the Shift key and select Utah, and then I can show you the copy. Right-click on the selection, go to Move or Copy, and this time we want to create a copy, but not in this workbook. We've got to update that and say we got to go back to our original workbook, and we'll move it before Vermont. And click OK. So it moves me right back to the Managing Worksheets so I can see the results of my work, and there's Arizona through Utah before Vermont. Cool. Then back in European Sales, I still have Arizona through Utah, which again, I could go ahead and double click on it and update it to the countries in Europe, France, Italy, and so on. Now, still staying in European Sales, you can see that I've got, for the tab selected, we got a group here. And what you can do is you can go ahead and create a new workbook based upon the sheets you have selected. So with the ones I have selected here, I can go ahead and right click. Maybe I'm creating a new workbook for sales in Asia, so I want to go ahead and have at least 4 tabs with the labels there, and then I can update it to the countries over in Asia there. In any case, let's go ahead and come up here and click on Move or Copy, and then instead of these 2 workbooks, we want a new workbook, and I don't want to move them to the new workbook, so I want to make sure that I check Create Copy, and then click OK. And now we have 3. We have our original workbook, we have the European Sales, then we have the new one that we just created here, Book 2, and it's got the worksheets Arizona through Utah. And then, of course, go ahead and rename those, save it. For sales, we have in Asia and the countries over there. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this and not save it. I'm going to go back to my original workbook. And something that you may find helpful for shortcuts, right now it may not be because we don't have that many worksheet tabs, but let me come over here and show you these 3 little dots there, that when you hover over it, you get arrows pointing in opposite directions. So when you click and drag that, you can stretch out the horizontal scroll bar. And you may not want to do that, but know that if you need more room, you can click and drag and push it back the other way. But let me go ahead and go even further to the left. And so it takes up all the worksheets but one. In other words, if you have like 50 worksheets and this scroll bar gets so tiny that it disappears behind it, or in this case, disappears because I pulled it all the way over to the left-hand side except for the last worksheet, that if you want to be able to jump around, you got your arrows that you can click on, and when you hover over it, you see in the pop-up, you get some choices. But let me show you that when you click on that arrow, it goes from one worksheet to the next. Utah, then Vermont, and then go ahead and click on it again to Summary. And you got the little ellipsis button or 3 dots. When you click on it, it'll go ahead and move it to the left, just like clicking on the arrows. So you can use the arrows or these 3 little dots to go left or right. You also get the option, like we just saw, the pop-up, that it says if you hold down the Control key and left click, you can go to the last worksheet. So if I'm like, quick, I got to jump to the last worksheet, the Summary tab, go ahead and hold down the Control key and click, and it goes all the way over to the Summary. Cool. And if I go ahead and Control click to the left, it takes me all the way to the first worksheet within my workbook here. Then it says if you want to see all sheets, because I want to be able to choose and not scroll, 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 you can go ahead and right click on the arrow and it brings up a list of all the worksheets. Great, then I can go ahead and jump up, jump down, jump around. Let's select Vermont, click OK, and it takes me right to it. You can hide worksheets, and why would you want to do that? Well, if you have 50 worksheets and you're only focused on 2, one's here and one's over there, but you don't want to reorder them, and whatever your purpose is, you can go ahead and hide all the other worksheets. That is temporarily until you want to unhide them. So to hide them, like let's say Utah, right-click on it and go to Hide, and it disappears. To bring it back, go ahead and right-click on any other available worksheet and go to Unhide. And there it is. Double-click to bring it back up, and there's Utah. Now, if you want to go ahead and hide 2 or more worksheets at the same time, if they're non-consecutive, like California and over here Arizona. Select California, hold down the Control key and click on Arizona. So now that they're both selected, right-click on one of the selections and go ahead to hide, and they both disappear. And then, of course, to bring them back, right-click on one of the available ones to unhide. And it doesn't allow you to select both at the same time, either using the Control key or the Shift key, which we'll go over in just a minute. You have to double-click to unhide California, right-click, go to unhide. Oh, here we go again, and double-click on Arizona, and now we're back. Now, if you want to go ahead and do a bulk selection, again, click on one of them, and let's say I want California through Arizona. So click on California, hold down the Shift key, click on Arizona, selects everything in between, right-click, and go to hide. And now we have to do it again. Right-click to unhide, one at a time, folks. Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves as I quickly do this. And if you're by yourself, that's okay, because I'll do the talking for us until I'm done unhiding each and every one, which is almost done, because the last one is right now. Oh, there's Arizona, double-click, and we're good. Now, it doesn't allow you to hide all the worksheets. If you try to select all of them and hide them, it's going to give you the raspberries and say you can't do that. If you want to be able to hide all the worksheets, that's hiding a workbook. And to hide a workbook, well, let me bring up more than just one workbook. You can see down below on the taskbar, I've got one workbook open. So if I right-click on the one that's open, the button that is down at the taskbar, I get the jump list, and I can go ahead and click on Excel to open up Excel 2019 again. In a new workbook, there's book 1. Let me right-click again. Let's do that again because that was fun. And open up another workbook, Excel, so we get 2 of them. So we have the original hide sheets, and it gets cut off. Then you have book 1 and book 2. So let's go ahead and select book 1 here. And you can see it up on the title bar, book 1. Now, to be able to hide that book, and you may want to do this because you want to keep it open and available, and then unhide it when you're ready or for a presentation, so there's less clutter, as it were. Go ahead and click on the View tab, go to the window group, and there it is, hide. You can see in the pop-up it'll hide the current window. Click on it, and book 1 is gone. Now we're at book 2, and you can see down below for each window I have open, I have a corresponding button that I can click on to minimize the book, and look, book 2's there to minimize it. It minimizes it down to the taskbar. Click on it again to restore it. To hide that one, View tab, to hide, and then of course to bring them all back, come up here, click on the View tab, go to unhide, and we're going to have to double click on each one because it doesn't allow you to do multiple selections to unhide them all at the same time. So here we go again, double click book 1, unhide, and double click book 2, and great. Now, as I mentioned down below, you got your name cut off. So if you have a bunch of workbooks open and they all begin with the same name, and it's hard to identify the name in full because, well, you got these workbooks open and maybe a bunch of other windows, what you can do is come up here on the View tab, go to the window group, and switch windows. And it'll do 2 things. One, it'll switch the window, but if you click on the drop-down arrow, it'll list those windows first that you want to switch to. So then I can go, oh, where down below it says hide sheets and, what's and? It's right there, workbooks, because it's not being cut off by other windows that are open. So that way, if I want to go ahead and jump to it, select it, takes me right to it. Oh, fun. Okay, exercise time is over. Let's go ahead and close out of those other workbooks so I can right-click on that button and close that workbook and not save it, or just go to book 2 and close out and not save it. And the last thing I want to show you is that if I come up here and I hide this workbook, and I'm okay with it being hidden because maybe next time I bring it open I want it to be hidden so I don't have eyes looking over my shoulder. This is kind of like, hey, I opened it up and I realized that this is not for everybody, or maybe it's a presentation and I'm holding them in suspense or to avoid clutter, things like that. And then when you're ready, go ahead, and you don't have the save button, but you can save it by coming over here and closing out of it. Then it's going to ask you, do you want to save your changes? You're hiding this workbook, it knows it. Do you want to save it? Yes. So next time when you open it up, and it's right there, my workbook, it's on the desktop, when I double click on it, you're like, what the fudge? Where did it go? Well, because you watched the training video, you know where to go. Click on the View tab and go to Window Group and click Unhide, and there you go, double click. It'd be a great April Fool's joke, but we only use Microsoft for good, not evil. And you want to keep in mind when it comes to hidden worksheets and workbooks, while they're not visible, can still be referenced from other worksheets and workbooks. You can still link to them. It's hidden to us, but not to Excel. It'll still pull in the data if you have them linked. And then be sure to save your work. That is, so next time you open it back up, this won't be hidden, unless that's what you'd like. If there ever comes a time where you want to compare one part of your worksheet to another part, but you have all these columns or even rows in between it, instead of hiding it, you got another option, and that's found up here on the View tab in the Windows group. That's right, you can split. And you can see when I hover over it in the pop-up, it says it will divide the window into different panes that each scrolls separately. So before you click on it, be mindful of what cell you have selected, because when you click on it, it'll split it above and to the left of it. Okay, let me show you. Let's come up here, click on split, and it split it above it and to the left of it. So you have 4 separate quadrants, and they each scroll separately. So if I go into the first quadrant, you can see down below, we got over here the horizontal scroll to the left of the vertical line here, the vertical split. Click and drag, it scrolls that way. If I want to come over here and scroll this part on the right hand side, we can do that, the horizontal scroll bar there. And then for the vertical, for the top part, there we go, click and drag to scroll. And then for the bottom section, there we go. And if you want to be able to readjust your split, you can go ahead and hover over the intersection until you can see a 4-way arrow, and then go ahead and click and drag and move it around and let go. Cool. And then if you want to get rid of it altogether, you can just go ahead and hover over it. Again, the intersection, double click really fast and it gets rid of it. But if you're not a double clicker, let's come back up here. Let me select that cell and do the split again. You can deselect the split and it gets rid of it, but let's bring it back up. And another option you get is that if you don't want to focus on the vertical split, you just want it split so you have top and bottom. To get rid of the vertical split, or to even adjust it for that matter, just go ahead and hover over it until you see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then click and drag and you can move it left or right. And let's move it back over here. And then to get rid of it, you can either click and drag it all the way off, which is going to take some effort. For me, it's a lot easier to hover over the vertical split until I can get right on top of it and double click really fast and it disappears. Now I just have, let me scroll over, my horizontal split, top and bottom. So that way I can go ahead and let me scroll up to compare the first record here, which is Max Klinger, and I can drag that right below him. And then, well, we've got the first record, and I can go ahead and scroll down to compare him against Paul Heffernan to find out who's earning more. Okay, Paul's earning a lot less, but he works twice as hard and is more productive. Okay, time to give him a pay raise and maybe reduce Klinger. Oh, what the heck, we'll fire him. In any case, you can go ahead and do it comparatively speaking that way, horizontally that is. And to get rid of this, you can go ahead and double click on it, and then to bring it back again, alrighty, let's come up here, click anywhere, click on the split. And I say click anywhere because as far as adjusting goes, I don't have that far to go. Let me go ahead and double click on the horizontal split to get rid of that. And then I can click and drag this over to right after the last name. And instead of having all these columns in between, which I can coincidentally go back and compare first, last to first and last, but we won't go that far. We just don't want to see the Social Security. We don't want to see, we just want the rate and gross. So that way, we don't have to hide the columns. We can go ahead and use the split feature to be able to just scroll over and compare the columns here, B and C to H and I, and still reference and go, oh yeah, that's right, Homer Simpson's only earning $15 an hour. And I don't have to, like, with it open, have my eyes try to keep on track all the way over to see his, well, hourly rate and gross. And then when I'm done, well, I can just come up here and deselect split, and it gets rid of that vertical split. To freeze a portion of the worksheet so it remains visible as you scroll, you can use the Freeze Panes feature, which is found up here on the View tab in the Window group, and there you go, Freeze Panes. You can see when I hover over it in the pop-up, it says it'll freeze a portion of the sheet to keep it visible while you scroll throughout the rest of the sheet. Before I go ahead and activate it, you want to be mindful of what cell you have selected, because when you activate it, it'll freeze everything above it and to the left of it. So those parts of the worksheet you won't be able to scroll. So for example, if I come up here, Freeze Panes, and there it is, Freeze Panes. And if you look at the icon, I don't know if you can really see it, but you have a cell that's shaded in. That's the selected cell. And so when you click on Freeze Panes, you see the cells above it that has lines through it. That means it's going to be frozen, static. Well, it'll go with you wherever you scroll, and also to the left of it. So let's go ahead and click on it. It adds the split, the horizontal and vertical lines, to let me know that everything that I have above that line is frozen and everything to the left of the vertical line is frozen. You want to see it in action? Yeah, alrighty, let's go ahead and scroll down row by row, and hey, everything from row 7 up above is frozen. What about the columns? Let's go ahead and scroll to the right. Everything from column A to C is frozen. So that way, that's pretty cool, because then I can go ahead and not have to hide those columns, but simply just scroll over and compare first last name to their hourly rate and gross. So that may bring up a good point. You may be thinking, okay, I would like just the vertical split, or maybe the horizontal split, but not both. Let's go ahead and unfreeze it, and you can see it went from freeze to unfreeze to unlock all the rows and columns so they're no longer frozen. And so if I just want to go ahead and let's say I want to freeze, well, when I scroll down I can no longer see the labels, so I can't tell if this is the first name column, the last name column. Oh man, well, unless I scroll back up. But if I go ahead and I freeze everything from row 4 up above, but I don't want the column, then you have to go ahead and click over in the first column, because when you freeze it, remember it freezes everything above and to the left. There's nothing to the left, so it doesn't add a vertical freeze pane. So it doesn't freeze anything over because there's nothing over there to freeze. So with it selected, come up here and click on Freeze Panes, and then go down to Freeze Panes, and it just freezes everything above that selected cell. So if I go ahead and scroll down, hey, great, now I can be down to row 50,000 and go, okay, Collins, that's his last name. And you can see when I scroll over to the right, the columns disappear because I selected the cell in the first column to prevent it from doing the vertical freeze. So no columns are frozen. So let's go ahead and unfreeze it, freeze panes to unfreeze. And so now if I want to go ahead and do a vertical freeze, so let's say that the first 3 columns here are frozen, so I can go ahead and scroll over so I can bring rate and gross right next to the last name and first name. Well, the problem is that I've got a merged cell. So if I go ahead and try to freeze it, and I want to freeze it from everything, remember, from the selected cell over to the left-hand side, but I don't want any horizontal freezes. When I select this one, well, there's nothing above it, but it doesn't define which column that I want to select to freeze everything to the left of that column. So if I do come up here and I forget about it, and I say freeze panes, you see where it split? It just picks something, I guess, arbitrarily. It split between columns F and G and rows 8 and 9. And all I wanted was a vertical split, so I have to go ahead and unmerge the cells. So let's freeze panes to unfreeze, right click on the merge cell of A1 through I1, and then come up here in the mini formatting toolbar and deselect merge and center. Okay, there we go, it's unmerged. Then I can go ahead and click in the column where I want everything frozen to the left of the selected cell, but in the top row because there's nothing above it, so it won't give me a horizontal freeze line. So let's come up here, click on Freeze Panes to freeze panes, and there's just the vertical split there that says everything to the left of it is frozen. So I can go ahead and scroll to the right, and oh, that's fun. But when I scroll down, the rows start disappearing because remember, it's just a vertical freeze, or the line here that says it's only going to freeze the columns and not the rows. Let's go back up here to freeze panes to unfreeze, and the other 2 options you get, you can freeze the top row, which is always going to be row 1, or you can freeze the first column, which will always be column A. Now the reason why it has the top row, because typically those who create databases, they put all their labels in the top row, but I don't do that. I move my labels down here, and so I wouldn't be able to really use the freeze top row or freeze first column. But the first row is known as the header row, and that usually contains all the labels, and when it comes to certain features within Access, it can immediately recognize that row, that whatever it contains in it, as the row that contains labels for the columns. But if you build the database right, you don't have to use the first row as your header row to put the labels in. As you can see down below, I have it built right in the sense that you can easily tell the header row, well, for this database, the row that contains the labels for each column, from the rest, because we got a line that separates it, it's in bold, different type of formatting, and I do have the border that breaks it up. So pretty much if I can tell the difference between the labels and the rest of the database by the formatting that I applied uniformly across all the labels, chances are Excel will also be able to recognize that, and we'll cover that in another training video about the top design flaws you want to avoid when it comes to creating a database. So when you use certain features in Excel, you won't get erroneous results. Or what's worse is if you do a sorting where you want to be able to sort everybody by last name, so the A's are up at the top all the way down to the Z's, that it just sorts this column, because if you sort this column and Simpson goes all the way down to the bottom and it doesn't keep the rest of that row with him, that record, he'll have a different Social Security number, and that would be horrifying. You can open up additional windows to work in different places at the same time. And what I mean by that is that you can open up the same workbook as many times as you want. And in this example, down below I have the states California, Utah, New York, and Arizona. I want to be able to view them all at the same time. So I'll open up this workbook an additional 3 times, or a copy of the workbook, and compare it with the original. So I have one workbook that I can see at the same time for California, then Utah, New York, and Arizona. So to do that, you want to come up here and click on the View tab, go to the Window group, and it's right there, New Window. You can see when I hover over it in the pop-up, it says it'll open a second window for your document so you can work in different places at the same time. And that means a copy, basically, of your workbook. So you can see up here on the tab, I've got the original name of it. When I click on New Window, it opens up and it gives me number 2. When I go back to the original, it's now identified as number 1. So from here, I can go ahead and click on New Window to open up a third one, as you can see up there. And then let's do it again, View to New Window. So I have a total of 4, 1 for each tab or worksheet. Well, except I don't want to see the totals. I just want these 4 states here. Next, to be able to see them all at the same time, I want to come back up here and click on the View tab. And of course, you can see them down below. There's the original 1, 2, and 3 copies of it. I want to come up here in the Window group and click on Arrange All. And you can see in the pop-up, it'll stack your open windows so you can see all of them at once. Click on it, and you can choose the arrangement style. I think tiled is going to be the best for me, so I'll leave it as is and click OK. Alright, I can't see the data, so what I'm going to do here is collapse the ribbon by clicking on those arrows there. I got my screen so it's super magnified, so it hardly fits anything within it, but hey, it's for visual purposes, so you can see exactly what I'm working on. And there we go. Okay, we got California listed 4 times, so to see them all at the same time, I just need to go to one worksheet and say, okay, over here we'll see Utah, and in this worksheet will be New York, and in that one will be Arizona. Cool. Now I can go ahead and view all these worksheets at the same time and be able to compare and contrast. Let's see, Q4 lemon to Q4 for Utah, $300. Okay, California did better. And then to make any changes to it, of course, you can just go ahead and click in here and type in, let's go from 200 to 1, something drastic, that will notice. And it automatically updates in all the other windows here because it's just basically a mirror image of the original workbook. So if I come over here to California, click on it, and there you go, it's 1. And then when I'm done, when I go ahead and close out of all the others, and close out of that one, close out of that one, and I've got the original left, well, you don't have to go and say, okay, that window was the original. Just when you close out of all of them, when you get down to the last one, that's going to be the original. So if you open up the original and it was in this bottom left-hand corner, and you closed out of that one first, that's okay. Just leave one of them open so it can go ahead and get rid of the extra copies of that window, the mirror images, and you're left with the original. And you can see on California, it's 1. Cool. Oh, and then to bring the ribbon back up again, let's go ahead and double click on the Home tab, and there we go. As you recall in earlier training videos, we learned how to enter in basic formulas, like when we want to get the totals for the month of January, February, and March. And let's go ahead and do it again because I want to show you something here that you have already seen. But when I hit the equals key, and I want to add up like the first cell to the next cell, the first cell reference is F7, so when I type in a letter, it brings up a list of functions all beginning with the letter F. If that annoys you, you can just go ahead and keep typing through and ignore it, and it disappears. Or if it really annoys you and you don't want to see it at all, you want to turn it off, alrighty, let's go ahead and hit the Escape key and go backstage, click on File, and then scroll down to Options. And go to the Formulas category, and it's in the section Working with Formulas, right there, Formula Autocomplete. You can see in the pop-up it's going to show a list of relevant functions and defined names. So if I uncheck it, it won't show those functions or any name cells or name ranges. In other words, cells or ranges that I gave it a name, which is covered in another training video. So for the sake of this training video, as a demonstration, let's go ahead and click OK, and then type in equals F. I don't get a list of functions or named ranges or a named cell. Great, let's go ahead and hit the Escape key. And then over here you see these green triangles, As you recall, when you go ahead and select a cell that has it, it gives you a little warning over here, and you can see in the pop-up when you hover over it that this formula in the cell refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. So Excel's concerned that if I double click on it, in its graphical selection here, you can see that we've got a number to the left of it, well, also down below it, and it's concerned that we're missing that number. So let me hit the escape key. You can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and say we'll just go ahead and ignore it, or if you want to completely get rid of it altogether and not have to click ignore for every single one, then let's go backstage and click on File, and we'll scroll down to Options. Go to the Formulas category, and there it is in the Error Checking section, Enable Background Error Checking. Go ahead and uncheck that, click Okie dokie, and they're all gone. And if you're like, okay, it's not relevant for here, but there's other cells where it's pertinent because I've got other numbers that I may miss out on and I want that error checking back. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back. Whew, I'm getting dizzy. File, let's scroll down to Options. Hang in there with me, we're almost done. Click on Formulas and then go back to Enable Background Error Checking. And in addition to that, you can also change the colors. You don't have to go with green, you can go with the hot pink and click OK, and it's all back except for the one that I ignored, but in hot pink. And then if you want to reset it all so it even brings back the one that we ignored, you got the reset option. Oh my goodness, one more time. Okay, File, I promise this is it. Options, Formulas, Error Checking, and Reset Ignored Errors. Click on it once, click OK, and it brings back everything. And the only one that it brought back was the one that we ignored. If you have a printout of a sheet that you're looking at on your desk and you're looking up here on the screen to compare the numbers between the two, you're looking up here, down, up, down, you're getting dizzy, don't do that. Use the Speak Cells feature. Have Excel read the numbers back to you so you can keep your head down on your desk looking at the numbers as you hear the numbers being read back to you. To bring up the feature, just come up here and right-click anywhere on the Quick Access toolbar. Go down to Customize the Quick Access toolbar, change it from Popular Commands to All Commands, and then scroll down to the S's. We're looking at for right, and there it is, Speak Cells, Speak. Go ahead and select it, click Add, and you get some other options we'll go over in just a minute. Let's go ahead and tackle the basics. Click Okie dokie. And there it is. Before you go ahead and click on it to start reading the cells, let's go ahead and select the range that we want it to read back to us. And then come up here and go ahead and click on it.
200, 800, 900, 500.
Okay,
400,
that's Fun Time Freddy. He's reading it back to us.
800.
And then when you want to stop, just hit the escape key. And the active cell, the one that's in white, is where he left off. If you want to pick up where he left off, then go ahead and click on Speak Cells.
800, 100, 200.
Okay, let's go ahead and hit the escape key to stop that. And like I said, you have additional options you can go ahead and choose from. Let's right-click to go back to Customize the Quick Access toolbar. Change it from Popular. Let's go to All, and then scroll all the way down to the S's. And there you go. You got the Speak Cells to stop, which we can do by hitting the escape key, but if you want that to click on, go for it. You can speak cells by columns, or you can do it by rows, or on Enter. New to Excel 2019 is the sound feedback feature where it provides sound effects, and sound effects can enhance your productivity in Excel by providing audio cues. For example, a sound cue might notify you when the options on the screen change, or a sound can confirm that an action like copying, pasting, formatting actually completed. So to turn this feature on, let's go backstage, click on File, and let's scroll down to Options. Click on the Ease of Access category, and there you go, Feedback Options. Go ahead and check Provide Feedback with Sound, and you get to choose a sound scheme like Modern or Classic, but I'm feeling kind of hip, so I'll go with Modern. And then go ahead and click Okie dokie, and now when you perform an action like let's do Save, and you can hear the sound when I click on it. There's your sound cue. You know you saved now. What about copying and pasting? So let me select a cell and do Control-C to copy. And let's do Control-V as in Victor to paste. You get that sound like somebody spitting. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the escape key. And then one last one. Let's go ahead and select a range and apply a fill color to it, like that color. And let's say that we want to copy the formatting of that range down to the adjacent rows by hovering over the bottom right hand corner of the selected range to use the autofill handle. You know, when you see the black cross, we covered this in an earlier training video. Click and drag it, and when you let go, you get another sound cue. There you go. And then you can go ahead and click on the autofill options and say you just want to fill formatting only. Well, those are some pretty cool sound cues. Now keep in mind that when you turn this on, it turns it on in all of Microsoft Office applications. So if I go to Word, the sound cues will work in there, and also Access, and vice versa. If you go ahead and you turn it off in Word, it turns it off in Excel and all the other Office applications. The Accessibility Checker checks the workbook for content that people with disabilities might find difficult to read, and new to Excel 2019 is the One-Click Fixes Accessibility Issues feature. So first of all, to find out if I have any issues for those with disabilities when it comes to reading my workbook or the worksheet here, let's come up and click on the Review tab, go to the Accessibility group, and there you go, Check Accessibility. Go ahead and click on it, opens up the task pane over to the right, and these are the warnings that it found. Like it doesn't like merged cells, and the merged cells that it sees is D2 through E2. So there's D2, and you see how it goes across to E2. So new to Excel 2019 is the one fix click. So how do you fix it in one click? You come over here and hover over it, you click on the drop down arrow. Okay, it's going to be 2 clicks. You click on the drop down arrow, and then you do the one click here to unmerge it. And then it disappears, no more warnings. The next thing that it finds an issue with is the generic names. It wants us to define what's actually on sheet 1, like this is my cells for gummy bears. It wants me to rename it. So to fix it in one click, first click on the first click and then rename the sheet, and then it puts it in edit mode. So it's highlighted with the cursor flashing at the end. So you can just go ahead and type over it. It accepts it the moment you hit the enter key, and hey, no accessibility issues found. People with disabilities should not have difficulty reading this workbook. Awesome. Also new to Excel 2019 is the Translate feature, where you can translate selected text into a different language. Like if I want to find out what the translation is from English profits to Spanish or German, select it, come up here, click on the Review tab, go to the Language group, and click on Translate. Opens up the task pane, translator. It's translating from English, which it detected, profits to, well, okay, English again, but we can change that. We can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and choose German. Select it, and it's Gewein, and not the kind you drink. And I can go ahead and flip that if I want. So I can click on the arrows to go from translator, from what it is in German, down to English, and I'll flip it back. Now that's for one word in a cell. How about if I had a bunch of words? Let's go ahead and click in an empty cell and type in happy to be alive. Let's go ahead and select it so it updates it. Translation to German is glücklich am Leben zu sein. I'll remember that next time I visit Germany. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please look in the description below this video.